Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the live datasheet review. Today is what's the date today? Today is the 18th of June, 2016, and of course, as always, we've got the Mr. Perfect, Peter Perfect. How are you, Peter?
Oh, you're talking about me.
Of course,
Oh,
absolutely. It's about perfect. It's about perfect selections and making sure that we not only create profit but also mitigate loss. So I thought I'd just make that stuff up on the fly.
yeah. Oh, blessed with compliment, even, even though false compliment, but
Take it,
appreciated nonetheless.
just take it, mate. You can put that up on your Instagram feed straight away because I know how up with in social media you are. So we've got a reasonably good house here of people. We've got lots and lots of regulars. I don't know if there's any new friends here online today, but just go over the quick how these things work. I'm here for pressing the record button and looking at the question box. That's pretty much my job. Peter does all the hard work and making sure that the intricacies of the IQ Pro continue to be revealed in the simplest format. So if you want to give me something to do, feel free to put a question in the question box for me to validate my existence here on the webinar today and butt in and ask Peter a question. So do that. Find the question box or the chat box and do that if you like. Without any further ado, I'll pass the baton, the virtual baton, over to you, Pete. So you can go ahead
Yeah,
and chug through the what looks like the Saturday, the 21st of May.
yes, it is. Thanks, Matt. We're going to look at a Saturday, and as will be revealed at the end, it's the sort of Saturdays we dread, we don't want to see. But I think it's valid to review some of the poorer days as well as the good days. I mean, to balance things out, and you can learn things from the bad days that can assist with, to some degree, I guess, in containing the loss factor. And if you're reasonably adept at containing your loss factor on days that are not good days, then that goes a long way to boost your overall net profitability. So let's get underway. We'll go through the selections first, and then we'll have a look at the data sheet and talk a little bit further. All right, so the first race of the day is this one, and it is a percentage return race, and as you can see, it's got all the hallmarks of being a pretty reasonable trading opportunity based on what we're seeing. I mean, we've got a pretty strong favourite, number 10, group of two runners holding more than 47.5% of the money. Clearly, they're the dominant runners here cumulatively. They're certainly the dominant runners at the 1 minute mark, at the 2 minute mark, at the 3 minute mark, and so on. And of course, we have the separator size that's quite acceptable of 1.83, which is bigger than 1.7. And so here we're going to get underway by trading with 4 and 10 as our group in percentage return. All right, we'll go to the next trading race, which is a little bit further down, this one here. Now, starting out, I guess, and I'll do this for the benefit of perhaps newer people, the basic money gap selections at the 1 minute mark would be, as you see, top two runners first, down to runner 1 for second, and down to the bottom for third place, 50, 70, 90 to red money gaps. Very, very, very basic. But of course, first thing we can do is we could get rid of these two bottom runners, I suppose, given that the runners down to runner 5 are holding more than 90% of the money, and we've got a multiple of 1.3 or bigger in the money gap column. We could stop here, but I guess because so it's really optional. You could stop here if you wanted to. You could stop here, or you could continue to the bottom of the field, given the sort of similarity of money. I mean, I think wherever possible, it is worthwhile sacrificing runners in the lower field that are attracting very little money. And you can see here that these runners have attracted nothing, virtually nothing. So quite reasonable to optimise things by applying the money gap allowance for third place. But of course, looking at going over to percentage return, we can see that we don't have an accompanying separator at the second runner like we have a money gap and trifecta. And if I go back to the 2-minute mark, you can see our defining money gap was 1.65. When you come to the 1-minute mark, it drops down to 1.58, which suggests that perhaps there is a sort of a similarity of money for the top 4 runners that perhaps shouldn't be ignored. And of course you can see that it's pretty clear cut here that there's a similarity of money for the top 4 runners. So it'd be more than acceptable to bring the selections for first down to runner 1, applying the addition allowance. And that's given you selections that I believe pretty well accommodate the prevailing money profile in this program, in this race. All right, moving on to the next selection race. And when I find it, there it is. Now here's another pretty clear-cut selection, just applying the basic money gap process. 50, 70, 90 to red money gaps. Top 3 runners, as you can see, very clearly dominant in the betting at this point here. If we go to percentage return, there's a money gap of 2.51 here, percentage return. We don't have that accompanying separator at the third runner, but I think, you know, if you look at the overall money injection for these top 3 runners relative to the rest of the field, it's more than acceptable to give priority to the location of this defining money gap at the 1-minute mark. And if we go back, and you can see quite clearly that it's been consistent in its position, and with each interval, say from 3 minutes it was 1.94, at 2 minutes it's 2.23, at 1 minute it's 2.51. So, you know, the money gap is increasing with every interval, reinforcing the fact that the money support for these top 3 runners is getting stronger relative to the rest of the field. So more than acceptable to work to that prevailing money gap for first and second, and of course I suppose the third defining money gap defining third is pretty clear cut. So there once again are selections that very well accommodate the prevailing money profile, such as we see. All right, moving to the next trading race. Once again, you can see here we've got top 4 runners for first and second. We could, I guess the first thing we would look at would be a possible negafactor with a favourite paying $1.90 and an associated money gap of greater than 2. But firstly, you can see quite clearly that the pool hasn't reached the minimum requirement of $8,000, so that rules out megafecta as an option. Furthermore, looking at the overall money support for the favourite over the series of intervals down to the 1 minute mark, you can see that it's certainly not, you wouldn't say it was dominant over the rest of the field. So even if the pool was of an adequate size, I think it would be far more sensible to opt for group selections in this instance, given that the money support for the favourite is certainly not dominant or clearly defined as being such. And if we go back, let's just have a look here. At 3 minutes, we had a banker trifecta, $1.70 favourite. At 2 minutes, it's at 2 minutes, it's jumped up to $1.80. At 1 minute, it's jumped up to $1.90. So, you know, the win dividend for the favourite is trending in the wrong direction. What we want to see is the win dividend reducing as we get down to the 1 minute mark, not increasing. So even though, and of course that gives reinforcement to the necessity to review races over a series of intervals down to the 1 minute mark. Because if you look at this just at the 1 minute mark, you'd say, oh, mega factor, $1.90 favourite. But you see by reviewing it progressively over a series of intervals, you get an entirely different perspective. So clearly, group selections for first and second extend down to runner 2. Once again, we can apply the money gap allowance for third place, given that to get rid of these lower order runners that are attracting next to no money. And here's another example of a trifecta selection outcome that, you know, I think strongly accommodates the prevailing money profile. And then I'm reinforcing this point about how strong these selections are, because for a reason that will become, hopefully will become evident later. All right, moving to the next one. This is a trading race in percentage return, a group of runners against a strong favourite. Notice that we could have stopped here like that. I mean, it would be an option to trade with these 3 runners against the weak favourite, number 3, holding only 22.29% of the pool, because that group of 3 runners is holding more than the required 47.5% cumulative minimum. But if you look over here, I guess the differential in money support between runner 4 and runner 12 is not all that great. It doesn't sort of stand out as being sort of a huge difference. And if we look at the 1 minute mark, you can see there's a similarity of money for the runners going right down to this point here. So that is why the extra 2 runners have been added to the lower, to be defined by the lower separator, and we've still got a trading race on our hands. So in this instance, we're going to trade with 5 runners against the weak favourite. Another trifecta. Now here you can see the, I'll just take the lock off so you can see the basic selections, of course, would be like that. But when we look at all the indicators that are prevailing here, particularly at the 1 minute mark, you can see that there is very, very clear-cut dominant money support for these top 3 runners. You've got a money gap, defining money gap of 2.04, which is significantly bigger than the minimum requirement of 1.7, and these three runners are holding 69.82% of the money. So we can happily apply the percentage allowance for second place and drop our second place selections back to there, like that. Third place, of course, extends down to the lower money gap at number 10. If I go back to the 2-minute interval, you can see that the money gap sort of maintains its size, 2.09, it drops slightly to 2.04. But I mean, you can see the strength of money building here for these top three runners. Not so evident here, but certainly it's reinforced here. So once again, a pretty strong selection outcome. All right, moving on to the next one, which was a percentage return. Here we're going to, of course, you can see the favourite is number 7. Now, it's a weak favourite in terms of percentage, as you can see, but it's deemed to be a strong favourite because it's at the top of the field with its own red separator. And when that occurs, of course, that converts it to be identified as a strong favourite, must be included to our group. We need it in the group anyway for the group to hold the requisite minimum requirement of 47.5 or more, and of course a very quite a large separator defining that group, so you can see these three runners are dominant, very dominant cumulatively, and also at the 1 minute mark, they're dominant as well. So there's a trading race in percentage return with 3 selections. And on top of that, if we look at the WUP column and the UDIF column for reinforcement, each of the runners has got numbers in the WUP column, which means that that indicates that those 3 runners are all market movers, which means that they're getting extra injection of money from the betting market to make them market movers. And on top of that, because of that money injection, they've all got negative values in the UDIF column. So going from the 2 minute mark to the 1 minute mark, they've all fallen in win dividend value by their respective amounts indicated. And notice that all the rest of the runners in the field are all positive in value in the UDIF column. So all these indicators are saying, yes, those 3 runners are the dominant runners in the betting at the business end of things. Going to the next a trading race in trifecta, as you can see. If we go to pretty much basic selections, 50, 70, 90 to red money gaps. If we go to percentage return, you can see that we have separators in the same location as the defining money gaps that we've worked to already in trifecta, sort of reinforcing. And I think in most instances, not so much with the defining money gap for first place, but the other 2, you can see quite clearly that the separators are bigger in size. So more than reasonable to stick with the basic selections. So once again, pretty clearly defined selection outcome, accommodating the money profile. Here we're trading in percentage return with a group of 3 runners, inclusive of the weak favourite, number 6, holding only 22.26% of the overall cumulative money. It's included in the group, obviously, because we've got to make up the requisite percentage, the requisite cumulative percentage component of 47.5 or more. And looking in the cumulative dollars column, you can see very, very clearly dominant here. So over the last 5 intervals, the main money action is definitely for these top 3 runners, and that's reinforced at the 1 minute mark. It's also been consistent 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, pretty much 5 minutes, right back to when we recommend you start the review of races. And so there's another pretty clear-cut percentage return selection. Yet another percentage return, inclusive of the very weak favourite, although it's not a weak favourite because of the fact that it certainly is in terms of percentage, but because it's got its own red separator, that means it's deemed a strong favourite because of that, and so it's included in our group, and our group, you can see, holds the minimum requirement of 47.5% cumulative money, and so that's cumulatively a dominant group. At the 1 minute mark, pretty clear cut that most main money is for those top 3 runners, or top 4 runners I should say, and so there's another percentage return trading opportunity. And the final trading opportunity for the day was Lucky Last, and it's, I think, pretty clear cut that it's just basic selection outcome. 50, 70, 90 to red money gaps. If we go to percentage return for reinforcement, you can see we've got separator locations identical to the money gap locations that we've worked to in trifecta, and indeed the separators defining our groups here, or the separators indicated in percentage return, are bigger in size than the defining money gaps that we're working to in trifecta. So once again, reinforcing the validity of this trading opportunity, and of course we can, because the pool is between $4,000 and $5,000, we can make a pool allowance, using our discretion if we feel that the opportunity presents it strongly enough. So there's the complement of selections for this particular Saturday, and I think they're without a doubt they were all. It could be said quite happily that they were all very valid selections. They all presented pretty strongly, and so under normal circumstances one could happily and confidently trade with those selections because they very much are in accordance with the training that in accordance with our training model, and also with the review of all the appropriate priorities in races. So let's go to the data sheet and let's look at this rather horrendous tale of woe. As you can see, it was a disastrous day. I mean,
don't sugarcoat it, all right?
Sorry?
Don't sugarcoat it.
No. I think we're all growing up. We've got to learn the bitter truth. But you can see it's one of those days where the old story, when you're hot, when you're not, you're not. And of course, we can learn positives from every situation, even negative situations can teach us. You it provides us with positive information to help us, to benefit us in future at future times. And let's have a look. We'll go back and we'll have a look at a few of these earlier races. Now you can see this first percentage return race was a loss. The first trifecta race was a dismal loss. We go to the next percentage return race. It's a loss. And of course it was a double whammy because it was both a trade both in trifecta and percentage return. So, you know, here we're sort of on a hiding to nothing. And if we just go back from the data sheet and go back to have a look at these races. Now, as I highlighted as I was going through, quite a valid selection outcome here, trading with these top two runners, and yet it lost. And if we look to see how that occurred, we see that number 3 was the winner. Now, number 3, you know, is halfway down, pretty much halfway down the field. So nothing outstanding about runner 3 that would, you know, even want us to even think about including it in any group. So that was a valid selection that just happened to be a loss on the day. All right, we go to the first trifecta race. Now remember, we discussed this in length and decided that the best course of action was to apply the additional allowance. And if you look over here at the 1 minute mark in particular, you can see that those top 4 runners are indeed the dominant ones in the betting relative to the rest of the field. So I think we could consider that to be quite a valid selection outcome, and yet it was also a loss. And if we look over here, we can see that we did pick up the winner, number 4, but the minor placings gave us number 6 at second and number 3 at third, the rank outsider. Now this is sort of setting a bit of a pattern here. This is sort of saying to us, well, hey, you know, we've covered off well and truly the bulk of, you know, the runners that are getting the strongest money support, and yet we're getting these fundamental losses that, and they're quite decisive losses, I guess, if that's the best way to put it. So we go to this next race, and so alarm bells should start to ring around about this time, because, you know, we're always looking to contain loss on poor days. And as soon as that sort of a losing trend, you know, starts to sort of suggest itself, then that's the time to really start seriously thinking about withdrawing from the day's activities. So let's go to SRO6.
Just want to make it clear, Tracy just asked why didn't we stop at 3 losses, Pete, and well, that's exactly what we're training to do, although with the trading that Pete does, or the data sheets that Peter prepares, we do all the races and keep a record of all the races all the time. But we absolutely recommend you stop trading once you've reached your limit of losses or profit. So if you have a look at often you'll see in the during these webinars, there will be a profit of in a day of $2,000 or something like that. we don't record that as a $2,000 profit day. We record that as whatever it was, the first step over $500 in our overall yearly profit record. So you're absolutely right, Tracy. Pete would actually, when doing the final review, would actually stop at that level of loss to contain that loss. But we do all the trades in the day because somebody might have started trading at 2 in the afternoon, missed the first couple, and for us to just stop doing data sheets at that time would not serve customers in the best way possible.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. Um, let me just speak about this race here, and then we'll go. There's a couple of other things that I'd like to discuss. Now let's have a look at this race. Now here, this was one that was fundamentally presented very strongly, if you recall. You know, these top three runners, you know, pick themselves really, and when all said and done, we're applying the basic money gap process here. Nothing fancy, no allowances, no nothing. And yet we've had another loss. And let's analyse the loss. First place getter, number 7. Look where number 7 is, way down. Second place getter, number 6. And then third place getter, number 3. So we, you know, from the outcome from what presented as being a strong selection race is that we didn't get any of the place getters covered, essentially, or certainly for first and second. And so when this sort of situation presents, it should really set alarm bells ringing. And there's no use throwing good money after bad. So, you know, if you have a series of trading opportunities that you consider to be pretty strong, and they're all dismal losses, then perhaps it'd be far better to just sort of withdraw from the day and accept the fact that, that there's a strong possibility it's going to be continue to be a pretty poor day, and you know, contain loss in that fashion. I think it's a matter of you know, being responsible, very responsible for your trading activities, and being decisive about your actions on any given day. You know, if you feel, you know, intuitively that, hey, like I've had 2, 3, you know, 3 what I consider to be strong trades and they've all lost, yes, if I continue on, I might be able to, you know, pick up the shortfall, but there's every chance that the losing trend will continue. And so on the strength of that possibility, I'm going to be strong enough and responsible enough to say, well, I think I will conserve my ammunition and live to fight another day and just withdraw from the day altogether. So I think, as we always say, you've got to trade positively, but you've also got to eliminate positively. So don't be frightened to say, well, you know, I've had a series of losses, I don't want to go any further because of the possibility of more loss. And I think by adopting that sort of approach, more often than not, you will save yourself a lot of misery and contain loss that can be help in a de facto kind of way boost your net profitability in the medium to long term. So, you know, that's I guess that they're the points that I wanted to make today, Matt. I'll just go back to the data sheet quickly, and you can see here that if you had decided to withdraw on this day at an early stage, it was a happy decision to make because the day didn't get any better. It sort of got a little bit better towards the end, but who'd want to be trading right through? I mean, look at this. You know, you get to this stage and really losing big time. I mean, obviously these outcomes are outcomes based on a $400 betting amount. So with a $200 betting amount, of course, it would be reduced down. But for the $200 betting amount, I mean, at this point here, you're down $500, and I think that's more than enough to help make a decision to curtail trading for the day. So, are there any questions about that, or anybody wants
I
to?
mean, I think that everybody's pretty okay with that. Well, not okay that there were losses, but okay with the learnings there. So the learning outcome, the point that Pete's making, going back quite a way to the 21st of May, was to represent a day that there are going to be losses, and we all know that that occurs, and making sure
Yeah,
that there is a strategy around that. And I was speaking with a client a little while ago who's not on the webinars, but I still won't mention their name. Had a good day to begin with, and then gave it all back and finished up in loss, and felt a bit nervous and sketchy about the program after that. And so having a strategy, a declared strategy, a declared I am going to do this and nothing outside of this, is the most effective way of actually running this business, your life, or anything else that you want to actually achieve. Is have a think about it, speak to an expert about it, declare it, and stick to it. And that's really what needs to occur,
yes,
doesn't it, Pete?
absolutely. And the thing is that you must maintain consistency. Now, as you saw quite clearly today, as was shown, all those trades were quite acceptable, clear-cut trading opportunities, applying the procedures as outlined in the training. Right, there was nothing there that stepped outside of that, and yet it just ended up being one of those dreaded days that come along every now and then that and just end in a series of losses. And so uh, the key is not to change the game plan and start manipulating your selections outside of the recommended way of doing it. The key is to know when to withdraw from the day's trading activities altogether. And if and I think intuition does come into this. If you have a series of early losses, and you get to a point where you think, well, hang on a minute, this is starting to impact on my um, betting reserve, then that's the right time to get out, and don't worry about what the rest of the day held. I think that it's we've got to learn to control our trading activity and to suit the tenor of the day's trading.
Yeah, look, that's great, Pete.
So
Thank you very much for that. Is there if there are any questions, I'm here to answer them. Just reading a couple of things here.
I think there was an old Kenny Rogers song, "The Gambler,"
Yes.
and I think the chorus went, "You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them," and that's pretty much what we're talking about here.
Daniel is just asking a question. Hang on, let me just check out one other. Just question is from Daniel, and it probably comes up every winter, but not there's certainly a reasonable way to answer this, or reasonable reason to answer this is, what do you think is the impact of winter racing that might have in regards to horses and profitability, Peter?
Well, I don't really pay much heed to those sorts of things, Matt, personally, because I mean, I first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned, this program is a money analysis program, and so the money should reflect the prevailing conditions. I mean, we don't get into the specifics of horse racing. We're allowing the money to do the talking, and we're just sort of surfing that money wave, I guess, to use an analogy, which is appropriate for the Gold Coast. But uh, to delve, and you've got to remember that we're dealing with, you know, there are premium racing carnivals occurring in winter. The Brisbane Racing Carnival is a premium racing carnival with group run one races and things like that. So you know you've got the finest horse flesh on display at these carnivals, and so I really don't think the actual season of the year has much bearing on, because the money investment, you know, is very much based on the prevailing conditions of any given time,
Yeah, great.
and the same applies to track conditions. Now, frankly, I'm quite ignorant about what the track ratings signify. You know, I mean, what makes a firm track better than a good track and all that sort of stuff. I mean, they're things. I guess they're esoteric things that are understood more by racing aficionados, but really that's got nothing to do with anything with this program. We're just simply analysing money, and I think with reference to, you know, wet weather racing, you've got to remember that the particularly the metropolitan tracks these days are very well drained and ventilated, and furthermore, with all the massive investment in thoroughbred stock in Australia, the last thing any racing officials want to do is jeopardise that, you know, that resource. So if there's been a lot of rain and the meeting goes ahead, it's because the track has recovered adequately to so as not to jeopardise either horse or jockey. And if there's any suggestion that the track is not acceptable or possibly dangerous, then meetings are called off for the day. So I think bringing seasonal elements into it probably just muddies the waters somewhat.
Great. Thank you,
But you
Matt.
know, I mean, if people using the program have got a greater knowledge of thoroughbred racing than I, which wouldn't be hard, and you feel that you can use that information to advantage, by all means, do it. But for anybody that's using the program along in the way, the strict manner that I'm suggesting, I don't think a great lot of heed has got to be paid to all these other things.
Yeah, that's right. And also remember that we are following the money. And so we're relying on a bit of market intelligence, in inverted commas, be that as it may, but that's essentially what our program is based on. It's, when we built this
Yeah,
program almost 20 years ago now, it was based on market intelligence and based on my understanding that I knew nothing about racing at the time, but the market knows something, and we're not using one tipster's ideas. We're using as Pete often eloquently puts it, a crescendo of data to actually make our decision upon. So, and of course that and Leon just made a good point that, our most successful trader, Chris Roberts, had never really considered the track conditions or the season much in his selections either, because he also understood that we're dealing with horses that are capable, owners that are responsible, and a market that is somewhat knowledgeable of what these horses can or cannot do in certain conditions. And it's well and truly up to and as Peter put it correctly, the owner, and I have owned horses. The owner is given the option at all times to pull the horse if it's going to be not successful. So do carry on, follow the data. You might see a reduction in the amount of money in the pools, but really over each season there are marquee days that you're going to see the bubbles of money coming in. So just carry forward. I would, as far as I'm concerned.
That's that's pretty much it. That's a good point. I was only thinking that myself. I was going to raise that point about Chris Roberts and other successful traders. I don't know of any people who have been consistently successful with this program that have had a great sort of a love of of thoroughbred racing. I think they've all sort of pretty much basically treated it as for what it is, and that is strictly a money analysis program.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think that's probably a good point to leave on. So we're just on the 50-minute mark, and I think that's a nice time to finish up. Are there any other? If there's no other questions, we will call it a day. Pete, any final words of wisdom you want to share with our lovely audience?
No. I just want to reinforce that the need to be resolute in your trading activities and to be consistent in the application of the selection processes. That's the key to it. Stick to the game plan, because for every lousy day like this one, there are many, many more that are quite the opposite. And so you can best to take advantage of those days by maintaining that consistency. So that's pretty much it.
Very good. All right. Well, I'll see you all in 2 weeks. I think that I don't have rugby in 2 weeks' time, so I'll be back online then, and I'll see you, of course, in the normal course of things, Pete.
Yes, for sure, Matt. Good to speak to you, and good to have everybody along today. Sorry about the prolonged hiatus, but we're back on in harness and back into routine now, and I certainly hope that you got some benefit out of today's discussions.
Very good.
I look forward to catching up with you all in a couple of weeks' time, and enjoy the weekend ahead.
Very good. Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
Bye now.